Hello, welcome to the inaugural episode of Manabites. I'm John Snyder. Today's question that we're going to dive into is, if God is so loving and all-powerful, why is there so much pain and suffering in the world? Now, if you are watching this video, I want to commend you. It's admirable that you're watching such a video about such a topic. I think so many people just go through life looking through it for entertainment, and they never really stop to ask the deeper questions, to scratch under the surface and find truth. Now, you might not agree with my premises nor my conclusion, and that's fine. We're all on this journey of life together, and I think the more we dialogue, the more we talk and discuss peaceably, I think the better it is. We're all going to understand and learn more. So with that, before we get into this topic, let me say there's two main disclaimers that I'd like to throw out on the table. First, this topic is so vast, so expansive, you could bring in fields of study ranging from philosophy, theology, history, psychology, etc. It's so vast, I don't know that we'll ever find the bottom of it. In fact, you could have the best minds that have ever walked this planet, and they could be talking their entire lives and still hashing this out. Furthermore, I think it would be very beneficial to come at this topic from two different angles, the macro and more the micro or personal. So in this video, we're going to cover just the macro. I hope to do a later video on the personal angle or view. But just looking at it from a broad perspective, why is there so much evil in history? Why are there famines? Why is there so much war, murder, etc.? And kind of looking at it academically. The other view or angle would be more of a personal, intimate approach. Hey, why is this evil happening to me? Why is God allowing this to happen to me? I thought I was a good guy doing good stuff. So with that said, let's look at the first point for this video, which is perspective. If we're going to accept, whether you believe this or not, for the purpose of this video, if we're going to accept and assume that there's an all-powerful, all-knowing God who's omnipresent, he's everywhere, just think about this. Whether you're a young earth person, say the earth and the cosmos is thousands of years old, or whether you think it's millions and billions of years old, the fact that life has continued on for that long, that amount of time, and we've had so many ratios that have been just right. We're in a just right world. So thinking about an infinite God who knew that the orbit of the earth and the ratio of the gases in our atmosphere and the distance from the earth to the sun, he knew all those things had to be just right. And for that to happen and continue to happen and be just right for thousands of years or millions or billions of years, he knows a thing or two. So we need to accept that his perspective is different than ours. And a lot of times what we think might be evil might not be. He might just say, hey, hold on, wait, let this thing play out. So great case in point. I've got Netflix. My favorite show so far on Netflix is probably Earth's Natural Wonders, and I believe it's episode 3. If you go and watch episode 3, there's a segment, I think there's 4 segments in this episode, but the segment on the Amazon is fascinating. There is, and this is happening now, current, this isn't, in the past, there's a tribe there that lives, the men are hunters, gatherers, warriors, and they have to coexist with the insect that has the most painful sting / bite on Earth. It's called the giant bullet ant. Doesn't look, for an ant it's pretty big, but still, you're thinking, man, how does this thing threaten the existence of man in the jungle? Well, its sting on its tail is 50 times that of the bee that we're used to here in the West. So, in order to turn young boys into warriors who can go into the jungle and withstand this sting of the bullet ant, the elders go into the jungle, they collect a whole bunch, hundreds of these giant bullet ants, about this big. They take them back, they sedate them with an herbal brew, and then they weave them into these really big gloves. They take boys as young as 9, and for 10 minutes, they slip the boys' hands into these gloves that have hundreds of giant bullet ants. They then take smoke to kind of wake them up from their sedative state, and the ants just go crazy. Sting, sting, sting. The boy is screaming, writhing in pain. They show a little bit of that in this documentary. And you're like, holy cow. Wow, how can you do this to your kid? He's 9. But in their mind, if you build up a tolerance to this sting, later on when the village is dependent on you to bring in the feed, to bring in the food for that day, the sustenance, you're going to be okay, because whether you get stung 1, 50, 100 times in the jungle, you've built up a tolerance. Plus, it's also fascinating, science has shown that the venom from this ant actually helps bring long life and strength to man. So a pretty wild thing. What is really cool though, at the end of that episode, the filmmakers, who are mainly from the Western world, they said, man, this was quite possibly the hardest episode that we had to film, because from our mindset, we're thinking, what do you do? Holy cow, is this worth it? Look at how much pain this young child is enduring, for seemingly an innocent reason. So I think a lot of times we're in the middle of something and we start to say, God, this hurts. God, this is bad. This is horrible. This is evil. And he says, hold on, wait till the very end, and I'll show you that really this is a good thing for you. Second point, why is there so much evil in the world? Well, is it always God's fault? I think sometimes we jump the gun and want to blame God. Imagine with me, if you will, take the 10 Commandments in the Old Testament and take the Golden Rule in the New Testament. Love your neighbor as yourself. Imagine right now on earth if every human being followed the 10 Commandments and the Golden Rule to a T. We'd have no murder, we'd have no theft, there'd be no lying, there'd be no adultery, no cheating on spouses, cheating on girlfriends, boyfriends. Right there, we just swept away, a huge portion of the so-called evil, the so-called bad things on our planet. Now, with that in mind, I want to focus just on thou shalt not lie. Because a lot of times we just think person to person, and yes, it definitely can ruin friendships. But think about all of the fraud, all the financial fraud throughout history, all the fraudulent deals from one nation to another. How much poverty would be erased just if institutions, banks, nations, countries never gave a fraudulent deal? What if all of the treaties that Americans broke with the Native Americans, what if we upheld all of those? I think we've broken something like over the 50 treaties that we signed with them. What if there was never a fraudulent financial deal? Imagine how much better the earth would be. And that's just one of the things that, again, we're assuming that this God is real, he asked us to do, and mankind over and over and over again breaks it. Okay, you might be saying, I kind of jive with that, John. I kind of see what you're saying, but what about like natural disasters? That, man's not doing anything to cause those, is he? Well, you could make some arguments that yes, but many times the people that are affected by the natural disasters, you're right, they had nothing to do. What did their actions have to do with the hurricane or the tsunami or a volcano erupting? Well, a couple things to keep in mind. And this first one might sound like a cop-out from my Christian perspective, but hear it out. In Romans it says that the entire creation is groaning and it's in decay, and the thought there is it's in decay because of the fact that man brought sin into the world. So I also think we should keep in mind here the time perspective. Assuming God is real, heaven is real, God created man. You look at the beginning, God created mankind, God created the earth. It says many times that God saw what he created and he said it was good. In fact, at the very end of Genesis chapter 1, it says that God saw what he created and said it was very good. That word good, if you look up in the Hebrew, can mean pleasant, can mean beautiful. So God made our earth very pleasant, very good, very beautiful. Well, Adam and Eve brought sin into the world. Romans now says that the earth is in decay because of that sin. And so I think it's important to remember that you and I living now, we're just in the middle, in between stage. So God made things very good, beautiful, pleasant, But then at the end, you look in the book of Revelation, he says in the end, he's going to wipe away every tear. There'll be no more pain. There'll be no more suffering. So then you have to stop and ask, well, man, God had very great intentions at the beginning, and he's going to bring, in the end, about a very great state, without, void of pain, void of tears, void of suffering. That sounds like a good God. So what's going on in the middle? Well, let's take natural disasters, back to that point. A lot of times they actually bring about good. Now certainly they can cause great destruction, and you might have friends or loved ones that perhaps had their homes wiped out or even lost their life, and that's tough, and I feel for you on that. We'll get to the timepiece in a minute here. But even a volcano, for example, does a lot of destruction, but for future generations now, the lava has turned that soil into very rich, fertile soil, and crops can be abundant, crops can grow. Down the road, that's a good thing. But obviously, yes, in that time, it could be painful and destructive. But again, if we look at perspective, hey, this life is short. Most of us are only going to live 70, 80 years anyway. Some might break 100. But if we're talking eternity, even the natural disasters, I think sometimes if our focus, our perspective is too much on the here and now, we miss the fact that, hey, God intended good and great. There is a little bit of pain and suffering here, but this earth, your life and my life, is probably only 70, 80, max 100, 110 years. But then later on, we can experience a glorious state of called heaven, where there's no pain, no suffering, no evil, and that's pretty amazing. Another thing I'd like to point out, the very fact that you and I are looking at the affairs of man, the affairs in the world, and we're saying, that doesn't seem right, that looks evil, hey, where's the justice? I think a lot of times that very heart cry is evidence that there is a God, or at the very least that there is some kind of exterior force that influences us to decide what is right or wrong. Because if we're just here by chance, and time, matter, and chance just somehow came together, all three are impersonable, and they created personal beings, who's to say that that's right or wrong? And if there's no ultimate judge, if there's no ultimate standard of right and wrong, because we're all just here by chance, why can't we just behave like animals? So I think a lot of times that very thing in you that says, that's not right, that's unfair, that's unjust, a lot of times I think that's put there just like you have a conscience that says, hey, what you just did was bad. I think there's a greater force out there. Call him God, call him what you will, I call it whatever you want to call it. We're appealing to this higher sense of right and wrong. So again, this video, it's not exhaustive. There's other points that I've thought of. I just don't want to make the video too long. But hopefully you can start to see a little bit of the Christian perspective to this question. And again, I'm going to make a video on that more micro level. Hey, why is this evil happening to me? And I think there's some good things we can discuss to help and encourage you through those seasons and those times. So thank you again for watching this episode of Man Bites. Have a great day.